Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Take 5 for Torah. Today is July 23rd, and because it's Wednesday, we're going to ask, why do we do that thing? And today, for Parshas Matos and Masei, I'm going to discuss what Rav Shaul Nathanson, the Divrei Shaul, says is a profound chiddush. You see, the Torah tells us that we're not allowed to live in Egypt. Where the Torah tells us that is, according to Ibn Ezra at least, not quite clear. In Parshas Bishalach, God gives us a promise. We'll never be at the backs of the Egyptians, never have our backs to the Egyptians again. Whether that really means that we'll never go there, okay. In Parshas Shoftim, God says, to the king, do not amass too many horses, so that you don't go back to Egypt, a place I told you not to go to. Okay, according to Ibn Ezra, that's actually the place in the Torah. It makes reference to something God told Moshe, but it's not written in the Torah. The third one is a punishment for our bad behavior, that God will take us back to Egypt on slave ships, Nebuch. So these are the three places that the Torah mentions the idea of living in Egypt. And the Rambam unequivocally paskins, it's forbidden to live in Egypt. Rambam lived in Egypt for a long time of his life, as did the Radbaz when he wrote comments on the Rambam. So what does it mean to write that you're not allowed to live in Egypt? Jews found themselves living in Egypt many times. So there are a lot of answers to this question. You're allowed to visit Egypt or go there for business, you're just not allowed to take permanent residence there. Well, Radbaz points out that we're also not allowed to take up residence anywhere where there's Avodah Zarah. And there's pretty much Avodah Zarah all over the world. So, be it as it may, the residence in Egypt has a big chiddush in Parshas Matos Masei specifically, according to the Divrei Shaul. Rav Shaul Nathanson, the 19th century Chacham, he says that the reason why we have the 42 journeys in the desert, Parshas Matos Masei, is to tell us how we're not supposed to go back to Egypt. Right? It says in the Torah, but derech hazeh, don't go back this way to Egypt. But if we can go a different way, maybe by plane, right, then it's permitted. It's no longer forbidden. That's a huge chiddush. That the only way we're not allowed to go back to Egypt is through these 42 trips. That's amazing. The Divrei Shaul says this, it's such a chiddush, one has to wonder why it took to the 19th century for someone to say it. So the Torah Shlema of Menachem Kasher on Parshas Masei says that, well, I have an answer to that, is that someone did say it well before him. In fact, the Ritva in Maseches Yuma actually gives the same svara, that all those trips, all those masaot, it's called Parshas Masei, Ve'ela Masei B'nai Yisrael, all these trips that we took when we left Egypt, starting with Sukkot, Miram says Sukkosa, that starting from there, all the trips were meant to teach us that we're not allowed to go back to Egypt, Dafka, that way. So this is would be certainly a limud zchus for all of those people who lived in Egypt. Certainly they did not go back to Egypt taking 42 journeys on the way. So this might explain how Jews could be living in Egypt and then writing in a law code that you're not allowed to live in Egypt. Right? The fact is that staying in Egypt is what you might call a lav she'ein b'maseh. It doesn't involve doing anything. You just got there and you're staying there. Since you're allowed to go for a visit, so staying there doesn't involve any act, just staying. Okay, but it's still forbidden, right? Okay, so that explains what according to the Divrei Shaul, according to the Ritva, why we have to have these journeys. Rashi gives a whole different explanation, that when you review and you remember all these places that you went to, it brings a longing between God and his people. Remember when we went to this place, remember we went to that place, remember you got this here, remember you got that there. Right? So this is the reason for all these journeys on Parshas Matos and Maseh.